there's been a ton of rumors out there with Brandon Aiyuk. And Brandon Aiyuk being a top flight receiver, depending on where you have him, I think Brandon Aiyuk is definitely a top 10 receiver in this league. Do the Steelers need to go after that guy? Well, the answer is yes and no. I don't want to sound wishy-washy or anything like that, because clearly we could use a guy like Brandon Aiyuk on the roster, but let's take a deep dive as far as why we would need him. Look, he's a great route runner, extremely great hands. He would be an upgrade, and he would immediately, and I do mean immediately, be the number one receiver on the Steelers roster. I love George Pickens. I love what he brings to the table, but he is not Brandon Aiyuk. It's kind of like Deontay Johnson last year. If he'd have had his head on his shoulders, he was the number one receivers that the Steelers had, excellent route runner, all that good stuff. Aiyuk is that and more, and he's got a good attitude. There's been a ton of rumors, but I think the rumors are just that. I don't think the Steelers are going to do that. I don't even know that it would make a ton of sense for the Steelers to want to do that. You know, that's just not what we do. Go out and pay big money for an a free agent wide receiver. Now, that doesn't mean that the Steelers can't change their way. Don't get me wrong. Look, Omar Khan has shown over the time that he's been the general manager that he's going to mix things up a little bit and kind of change the way that they do things. And I think that's a good thing. But having said that, Brandon Aiyuk, I just think that the cost and what he's going to cost is just going to be too much. Look, I would love to have him, but I think the rumors are just that. They're just rumors. Now, the one thing that would be against, or it's actually in Brandon Aiyuk's favor, that the Steelers or anybody that's willing to sign him, you're going to have to look at Devontae Smith, what he just signed. I mean, that has to have every wide receiver out there that's up for a deal. It has to have them drooling. You know, he got $75 million added to his contract over 3 years, $25 million a year. I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense for the Eagles to do that, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for other teams to necessarily do that. I don't think it does, and especially the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, the draft is full of wide receivers out there. Are there going to be anybody out there that's as good as Brandon Aiyuk? Maybe not, but we don't know. But the one thing that I do know is that money can be allocated to other places. Look, there's things that the Steelers can do to be better. I'm not sure spending all those resources on one wide receiver is the way to go. Matter of fact, I'm positive it's not the way to go. I don't think the Steelers need to do that. I would love to have them. Does it make sense? Sure, it makes sense. But I think there's other guys out there that make even more sense for what the Steelers should do. Let's take a look and see exactly who some of those guys are. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about other receivers, and again, this guy has been rumored to be out there for weeks now, is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is from Pittsburgh, went to Pitt. I mean, he would be an ideal person to be at the wide receiver position for the Steelers. First of all, he's pretty good. That's number one. Second of all, he has been a number 2 or a number 3 receiver since he's been in the league. So he is fit to be a number 2. Look, if the Steelers offense is going to go where it wants to go, George Pickens has to take that next step to be the number 1 receiver. He's got the talent. He's just got to mature. He's got to get a little bit better at the route tree. If we're being honest, I think we all know that as Steeler fans. But if he does that and he takes that next step, Tyler Boyd fits in as a number 2. It's perfect for what the Steelers are trying to do. He's not afraid to go over the middle, not afraid to make the tough catches. He makes a lot of contested catches, and the price is right. Now, the difference comes in is that it seems like Tyler Boyd is wanting a certain number out there that the Steelers aren't willing to pay. I applaud the Steelers for that. We want you, but we want you at our price. We're not going to overpay for a second receiver with all these other receivers that are in the draft. Can we use Tyler Boyd? Yes. Is it the only option? No. Here's a couple of other names out there that maybe people aren't thinking about. I mean, you might say, Big B, you're crazy, but they could fit in and work well with what the Steelers are doing. The first name that comes to mind is Michael Gallup. Look, Michael Gallup is now he's 100%, coming off that ACL injury he had at the end of 2021. So he's back to 100%. His first year, he was dragging his leg around. Last year, I think the Cowboys could have used him more than what they actually did. They had, CeeDee Lamb, they had Brandon Cooks, but I think Michael Gallup, with what he brings to the table, which is speed and the ability to take the top off of defense, I think the Steelers can use that. Look, we love Pickens and what he brings. Gallup on the other side of that, yeah. Or even as a number 3, bring in Michael Gallup. The price tag's not going to be crazy. He's been productive. He also has experience playing with other really good receivers. Again, the mindset, something that we have to think about. You can't just always go get any wide receiver and they think they're the number 1 guy. I think that's what comes in with Brandon Aiyuk. He's going to come in, he'd be the number 1 guy, but then that's how does Pickens react to that? That's a problem that we don't even need to create if we don't have to. You know what I'm saying? No reason to even go down that road. Another receiver that I believe that the Steelers can take a look at, Hunter Renfrow. Now, I know a lot of people don't like what Hunter Renfrow brings to the table, but I do. He's a wide receiver that goes over the middle. Number 1, he's a slot receiver. And the Steelers, you might say Calvin Austin the third, he's a slot receiver. Yeah, he is. But Hunter Renfrow has proven at a higher level than Calvin Austin has, at a much higher level. He goes over the middle. He makes tough catches, runs great routes, gets open. That's something that the Steelers need, especially in this Arthur Smith offense. They're going to need somebody like that. You may say, well, with Russell Wilson, if he's the quarterback, is he going to be able to see Hunter Renfrow with some of these option routes going over the middle? Maybe that's a problem, but that's a problem I'd like to have. I would rather have Hunter Renfrow getting open, running option routes, going over the middle, making contested tough catches, and having the option of Russell Wilson, if he is the starter, by the way, being able to see him versus not guys getting open. Look, Calvin Austin, his biggest strength is taking the top off of a defense, not counting on him going over the middle because that's not what he does. This guy out of the slot, Hunter Renfrow, I think that's something that the Steelers could look at and use. Again, not the biggest of names, maybe not the biggest of acquisitions, but still a solid acquisition that, look, the Steelers just need to make. Everything doesn't have to be the home run splash. A lot of times, some of these acquisitions just have to be the ones that make sense. This one, it makes sense.